I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the Israeli army defuses 2 explosives on the border with Gaza. The Israeli government passes a controversial new law banning BDS supporters from the country, and it might be time to start following baseball because Israel's team is going far in the World Baseball Classic. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Tragedy was narrowly averted this morning when Israeli soldiers discovered 2 explosive devices near the border fence with the Gaza Strip. The IDF troops successfully defused the explosives before they exploded. The neutralized charges were then gathered and are now being examined by ordnance experts. Defense officials say Palestinian terrorists deliberately placed the bombs in a restricted zone in the northern Gaza Strip to target Israeli soldiers operating in the area. Fortunately, no one was hurt during the incident. Today's developments come amid rising tensions between Israel and Gaza. This past Thursday, the army retaliated with several strikes at the Strip's Islamist Hamas rulers. This was in response to cross-border fire at Israeli soldiers by terrorist gunmen in the enclave. There's also been a spate of Palestinian rocket fire into Israel, most recently this past Wednesday. There were 5 such attacks during February, 2 of which were carried out by Islamic State affiliates in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. All right, a new bill to ban supporters of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement has just been passed into Israeli law. Even those who boycott West Bank settlement products are being targeted by the legislation, and ILTV's Aaron Porras joins us with more. Aaron, I almost got your name wrong there.
I saw that.
All right, so tell us, what is the scoop?
All right, well, the bill passed its 3rd and final reading on Monday. And the good thing is that it doesn't target everybody. So, we have foreign nationals with residency permits here in Israel are not included in the ban, and the foreign ministry would still have the ability to make exceptions just like they did before.
Sponsors of the bill, like MK Roy Folkman from the Kulanu Party, say, quote, "It's possible to feel both national pride and also believe in human rights. It is also possible to defend the name and honor of the State of Israel, and this is no embarrassment," end quote. MK Dov Khanin from the Joint Arab List said Israel would be isolating itself and antagonizing BDS supporters. Several boycott supporters or members of organizations that support BDS have already been stopped from entering the country before, the first time with Isabel Firi from Malawi just this past December.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. President Donald Trump are maintaining close contact amid continuing aggression from a defiant Iran. The American leader called the Israeli premier on Monday to discuss dangers emanating from Iran and threats the Islamic Republic is posing in the region. They also discussed the 2015 International Nuclear Pact, which is opposed by their mutual administrations. The conversation comes in the wake of reports that Iran test-fired 2 missiles in the Persian Gulf over the weekend. Both Jerusalem and Washington are outraged by the test, claiming that such a drill is banned by the United Nations. Meanwhile, the United States is reeling after Tehran deployed several of its fast attack speedboats to harass a U.S. Navy ship in the Strait of Hormuz. Last month, the Trump administration warned the Islamic Republic that it had been put on notice by imposing a series of sanctions on entities connected to Iran's ballistic missile program. The new American administration has adopted a more combative approach to dealing with the Islamic Republic, which has been warmly welcomed by the State of Israel. The phone call from U.S. President Trump has actually come right in the middle of a session police are holding with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. This is the 4th time the premier has been questioned as part of an ongoing corruption investigation against him. Netanyahu offered apologies to the investigators for having to suddenly take the call and leave the room. The premier is at the center of 2 cases. One involves his suspected receipt of gifts from businessmen. The other is about allegations he arranged to limit competition in the media sector for an Israeli newspaper publisher in exchange for more positive coverage. Once the probe is concluded, police could decide to dismiss the charges. The other possibility is that they'll recommend the Attorney General indict the 67-year-old leader. This would most likely lead to the prime minister's resignation. The Supreme Court set a precedent in 1993 that ministers must step down if they are charged with corruption. That scenario would almost certainly mean the holding of new national elections. And even though Netanyahu adamantly denies any wrongdoing, it appears his political rivals may already be maneuvering in a search to line up his successor in a post-Bibi Israel. There was a dramatic exchange of gunfire in Ramallah last night during the attempted arrest of a wanted Palestinian terrorist. The outside of the suspect's home appears peaceful today, but inside tells another story. Numerous bullet shells litter the floor alongside an Arab kefye. Israeli soldiers and military police came to the West Bank city of Ramallah to take the suspect into custody, but during the arrest raid, he began shooting at the security forces. The Palestinian gunman was killed in the exchange when they returned fire. Palestinian health ministry officials have confirmed the death and have identified the man as Basel al-Agaj. They say his body has been retained by Israeli authorities. A local witness at the scene described the incident.
اللي صار بالضبط انه صار اشتباك بينهم وبينه الجيش اطلق قذيفه عليه في السده هون في المنطقه الصغيره هون مكان قاعد وعندها قام بسحل جثمانه عبر الدرج من فوق السده للدرج تحت واخذوا على بعض الطابق. كان واضح شفته صورته انه دمه موجود على الارض لانه الجيش كان بيسحب فيه على الارض.
Two firearms were found at the scene. Police say the 31-year-old shooter was the leader of a cell that's been conspiring to launch attacks on Israeli targets. No Israeli troops were injured during the operation. 2 American tourists and 37 Israelis have been killed in a period of sporadic violence that began in October 2015, but has tapered off in recent months. During that same time, at least 237 Palestinians have been killed in Israel and the Palestinian territories. Jerusalem authorities say that at least 159 of those killed were assailants who launched stabbing, shooting, and vehicle ramming attacks. The others died during arrest operations, clashes, and protests. Israel is blaming the surge on a campaign of incitement by the Palestinian leadership. Today, a top UN staffer in Gaza is believed to have been elected to a senior role within Hamas's political wing, the top governing body of the terrorist organization that rules the Gaza Strip. ILTV's Aaron Porras returns to the studio to tell us more, and this time I got your name right, Aaron.
Yeah,
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Natasha. Yeah, today we're talking about Mohammed al-Jamasi, and he's yet another United Nations Rights and Works Agency employee who has been found in recent memory to be active within Hamas. Despite the conflict of interest it presents and the fact that Hamas is an internationally recognized terror organization.
Mohammed al-Jamas currently serves as a board member of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency and a chairman of the engineering department in central Gaza, overseeing all of the UN agency's infrastructure projects in the area. According to the Meir Amit Intelligence and Terrorism Information Center, since 2007, Jamasi has held various positions within Hamas, including the group's public relations department and various charities. Al-Jamas is the second UNRWA employee to be accused of working for Hamas in the past months. Last week, Suhail al-Hindi, a teacher heading the agency's employee union in Gaza, was suspended by UNRWA after Israel demanded his immediate termination. The claims against al-Hindi were made by COGAT, the Israeli Defense Force agency responsible for civilian affairs in the West Bank and Gaza. UNRWA initially denied the claims against al-Hindi, but later suspended him after the agency had received substantial information corroborating Israel's claim. In 2015, the United States gave UNRWA $380 million in funding to provide Palestinian refugees and their descendants with education, healthcare, and social services.
It's just been revealed that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and opposition leader Isaac Herzog were planning on announcing a regional peace initiative last fall. But it looks like that plan fell apart when the two politicians failed to create a national unity government. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with the Times of Israel diplomatic reporter Raoul Woodliff to ask whether or not their 8-point plan can still be used as a basis for a future peace deal.
More than just a plan, it was a statement that was written, that was the document we've seen is in English, ready to be read out at a potential mini summit in possibly in Egypt, that would have set forward Israel's position on possible peace negotiations and set in place the beginnings of negotiations for Isaac Herzog to join the government and form a unity government in Israel. So it's more than just a possible plan for the future. It was a document that set out exactly how Israel was going to move forward in those circumstances.
So the agreement between Herzog and Netanyahu didn't work out. There was no political coalition between them. But moving forward, could this not become the policy of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he could still issue this as a way of indicating to the Arab world that this is Israel's view?
Well, this is what Netanyahu has been suggesting or saying that he believes in. He said about a state minus, not really the two-state solution, perhaps a 1.5-state solution.
Palestine, but demilitarized and living inside borders that are less than the 67.
Exactly, with Israeli troops across that area. This idea is an extension of that, and an extension of the reports we've seen in recent weeks of possible ideas that he's put forward.
But it does seem to call for limiting Israeli settlement activity, so perhaps that would make it very difficult for the right of center, the right-wing partners in the coalition to join Netanyahu in this effort.
That's true, and it's been suggested that this could potentially harm Netanyahu within his right-wing coalition and give a boost to Herzog, who has been seen for a long time as giving in to Netanyahu for nothing, desperately trying to join the coalition. But many in Israel, and particularly on the right, view Netanyahu as this sort of Machiavellian mastermind, who has everyone in his pocket. And this, in a way, plays into that. He's not signed anything. He's not gone through with it. It's easy for him to claim that this was a plan to bring certain sides together, but he was never intending to go through with it or freeze settlements. And at the moment, he's still strong politically, and it doesn't seem that it would necessarily harm him too much.
Raul, thanks so much for being with us at ILTV.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, every year, lots of young Jews immigrate from all over the world to volunteer in the Israeli army as lone soldiers. It's not easy to leave behind their friends, families, and communities, so it's no wonder that some end up returning home after their service. Well, one such volunteer decided that he still had a lot more to give to Israel, so he stayed on to start an organization to help disadvantaged communities in the Holy Land. Joining me today in the studio is David Baskin, a former lone soldier and the founder of Ani Shlishi, which provides clothing and household items for those in need. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So tell us a little bit about this organization that you've created. What made you decide to create it, and where does this name come from?
Exactly. So Ani Shlishi, what we do is we take things from lone soldiers when they've gotten released from the army, and we deliver them to people in poverty throughout the country. And it's a concept of a continued contribution for these soldiers, a way to continue to serve the country that they came to serve. And the name Ani Shlishi, which in English means I'm third, this came from the inspiration of this organization came from a good friend of mine whose name was Ross. Ross was a former baseball coach of mine. He was a mentor, a friend, and he actually passed away last year due to stomach cancer. And he was a very quiet, shy individual, but he had one speech that he would give every year, and it was called the I'm third speech. And he would say, first comes the greater good, next comes others, and then I'm third. And it's a concept of selflessness and generosity and how to be a good person. And so this is the philosophy that we're trying to espouse with this organization while still giving a nod to somebody that I cared very deeply about.
No, this is, I mean, that's a beautiful story. I understand, like you said, that the goods, many of these donated goods are actually coming from lone soldiers themselves, correct? Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So we're actually partnering with Gurain Sabar, which is one of the biggest lone soldier organizations in this country. And what they do, their model is that they take people throughout the world that want to come here, that want to enlist in the army, and they put them on a kibbutz together. So these 20 to 25 people, after 2 years, they leave. And I had the simple realization that if you put 25 people in one spot, and then after 2 years they leave, they accumulate a ton of stuff that they no longer need. And so you have people who have stuff they no longer need, and then you have a country in which 22% of the country is in poverty, and it was a very simple connection to make.
Absolutely, and I mean, I'm sure that these, young people have so much to give. They want to be part of this. They're already coming to Israel to volunteer in the military. Why not help even more? So What communities have benefited more specifically from these donated goods?
So what's so beautiful about this is that the scope of the people we can help is gigantic. So we've been able to help schools, we've been able to help women's shelters, we've been able to help shelters for runaway kids, we've been able to help so many different groups of people, African Refugee Center. When you have, it's sort of like a matchmaking process really, because the donations come, we categorize them, and based on the category of these donations, we're able to really help the population which they can best serve.
This is amazing. Now, is this something that you're doing full time? I mean, this must take a lot out of you.
Yes, it is something that I'm doing full time, and we're actually moving towards making it into a thrift store model in which we can raise money using these items, still giving a percentage of them to people directly so that they can
Similar to
use
the
them.
Salvation Army.
Exactly. And then using that money in order to provide educational opportunities for people in poverty in this country.
Beautiful. I mean, David, I think you have clearly served your country in every way possible. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. So glad to be here. Thank you.
The infamous gate of the Dachau concentration camp is finally being returned to the memorial site in Germany more than 2 years after it vanished. There was worldwide outcry when thieves stole the wrought iron entrance overnight on November 2nd, 2014. The gate's cynical inscription with the German words Arbeit macht frei, meaning work sets you free, is a powerful reminder of the horrors during the Holocaust.
Es war ein Symbol des Leidensweges der Häftlinge des Konzentrationslagers Dachau. Sie mussten jeden Morgen an diesem Tor vorbeigehen, jeden Abend wieder zurück. Und deswegen ist es den Überlebenden, aber auch den Angehörigen der Häftlinge, ehemaligen Häftlinge des Konzentrationslagers so wichtig, dass herausgefunden wird, wer diese Tat begangen hat. Das ist, also sie legen großen Wert darauf, dass die Ermittlungen nicht eingestellt werden.
A replica gate was created and hung in the interim years. The original was finally discovered by police abandoned at a parking lot in Norway. Bavaria's culture minister says the restoration is healing.
Es ist die Heilung eines Angriffs auf die Integrität dieser Gedenkstätte. Man hat ganz gezielt und bewusst dieses Tor entfernt, weil natürlich das KZ Dachau als erstes dieser Schreckensorte eine weltweite symbolhafte Bedeutung hat, und insofern ist es ein Heilen dieser Wunde.
Dachau was the first Nazi concentration camp. It was built just outside of Munich in 1933, within weeks of Adolf Hitler's taking power. It was initially used to detain the Nazis' political rivals and served as the prototype for the vast network of other camps. 6 million Jews were murdered at the sites, in addition to an unknown numbers of Romans, Russians, Poles, and homosexuals. More than 200,000 people had been detained in Dachau by the time it was liberated by U.S. troops in 1945. Televised films of piles of bodies and the starved inmates in the camp were among the very first images the world saw of the atrocities committed during the Holocaust. All right, moving on to a much happier story. Baseball isn't the most popular sport in Israel, but it may be time for that to change because the Israeli baseball team has just won its first 2 games in the World Baseball Classic. Israel beat South Korea and Taiwan in the first 2 opening games of the international event. This is the first time that Israel has played in the World Baseball Classic, which takes place every 4 years. Now the Jewish state will be facing the Netherlands, which is considered a weaker team than South Korea and Taiwan, but is still ranked above Israel. 16 nations will be batting off in this year's World Tournament, and first-round winners will advance to the next set of games in Japan. Almost all of the members on the Israeli team are American Jews because, according to the rules of the World Baseball Classic, players that are eligible for a certain country's citizenship may compete for that country. Israel happens to offer citizenship to all Jews around the world, which is perhaps why the Israeli baseball team is shaping up so well. But coming in with a ranking of only 38 in the world, it's safe to say the Jewish state is already surprising fans by making it this far. Joining us now on the phone all the way from South Korea is General Manager of the Israeli baseball team, Peter Kurtz. Thanks for joining us. First of all, congratulations on the big wins. How's the team feeling? Did you guys expect so much glory already?
The team is feeling fantastic. The guys are really happy with that first win against Korea. They were definitely confident. They were definitely expecting to beat Korea But, you know, being confident, expecting to win is something different than actually having the win under your belt. Certainly the second game against Taiwan, which we just won a few hours ago, 15-7, was the cherry on the cake. And right now we're just waiting for the results of the game tomorrow between the Netherlands and Taiwan, and then we can start packing up bags for Japan.
Now, the Israeli team is set to play the Netherlands next. How can we expect Israel to perform in this upcoming game?
I think Israel has a pretty good chance against the Netherlands because, first of all, the Netherlands defeated Korea 5-0 this afternoon, this evening. So they weren't showing the kind of powerhouse that we all thought they might be. I don't know if that's going to continue over the next couple of games, but their pitching was very good, and we're just hoping that we can have a good showing against them. And I hope that game is only going to be for the protocol of which team will be in first or second place. Because if the Netherlands beats Taiwan tomorrow, then that game between the two of us is just for the protocol.
Great. So here's a big question. If Israel does beat the Netherlands, what is next?
If Israel defeats the Netherlands on Friday, we fly to Japan, and we play against the two top teams in the Japanese division. And then it's again a tournament of 4 teams. Each team plays each other once, the same way it was in this division. And then the top 2 teams from there go on to Los Angeles for the finals.
All right, Peter, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, well, we're all looking forward to the next game. Okay, an Israeli startup has just designed a powerful yet simple new way to help those who suffer from the debilitating disease of diabetes. Around 415 million people are diagnosed with the disease worldwide, which occurs when the levels of glucose or sugar in a person's blood are either too high or too low. The Israeli company GlucoMe is trying to combat the issue, especially since the metabolic illness is becoming more widespread and there's an insufficient number of caregivers available to help. Now GlucoMe wants to change that dynamic by offering a digital diabetes clinic. GlucoMe's cloud-based data analysis streamlines treatment through simplified medical hardware. The company has designed an inexpensive smart glucose monitor that uses a lancing device to take blood measurements. The information is then processed by the GlucoMe app on the user's smartphones to come up with an in-depth analysis and full treatment plan. That plan is then forwarded to the patient's healthcare provider, and once it's approved, patients download and follow the plan. This includes GlucoMe's own insulin monitoring pen, which records all activity. It even features alerts of any missed treatments, meaning patients will never miss a dosage, which can sometimes be the difference between life and death. GlucoMe has completed trials in Israel, Germany, and the US, where it's expected to be approved by the FDA later this year.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by the University of Haifa, Hebrew Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. If you have a sweet tooth, you're not alone in the world, so today's word is sukar, which means sugar in Hebrew. There's nothing like a sukkah rush to put you in a good mood, and here in Israel, Israelis have the art of sweetness down. Hang out with any Israeli and you'll probably end up eating something that's at least half composed of sukkah. Israeli iced coffees or iced cafe are really just a little bit of coffee with a whole lot of sukkah. Every kiosk in Israel features a display of gummy candies, otherwise known as sukkah-filled delights, or just try an Israeli-grown fruit, which will probably be more sweet than any produce you've ever tasted. Just remember, as much as sukkah may bring you happiness, it can be fattening and unhealthy, so try eating less. After all, you're probably sweet enough already. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy with a low of 50 or 10 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow is also expected to be partly cloudy and with no change in temperatures, with a high of 71 or 22 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.68 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you next time.